Crypto on CoinDesk TV. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and this week we are discussing the importance of security and privacy in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency sector. I'm joined now by Chris Constable, founder of CoinOS, and Shannon Allen, managing partner of Next World Leader and strategic sales advisor for Endpoint Lock Security. Welcome to the show, Chris and Shannon.
Thanks, Isaiah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Glad to have you both. And let's start with you, Chris. Give us a little bit about your background in security and how you got into the Bitcoin world.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I guess since the middle of the 90s, I've been in the IT security game. So I've done a long stint there. And then since 2005, I guess I've been working mostly in the privacy space. And I got a call, I guess it was the end of 2013, from a bunch of guys who raised some money to do one of the first Bitcoin blockchain companies in Canada. And they said, hey, we're going to have some security issues with this. Do you think you can come help solve it? And as I looked at Bitcoin, I thought this could be the future of like actual currency. I don't know if I can solve security for all of it, but I'll come out to Vancouver and do the best I can. So yeah, I've been in the space since, I guess, January 2014, a bit longer than most of the people these days, it seems.
Oh, yeah, nice. And it seems like we have similar background. I, too, was in IT security before I got into the Bitcoin space and found it at the end of 2013 as well. So a lot of synergy. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of us out there. So Shannon, to you, give us some insight into your background as well.
Well, similar to you guys, I got into crypto around 2014. So you guys are a year ahead of me. But I've been into the IT space since 1998, where I first moved to Seattle, and actually I did some things in Vancouver as well, so that's pretty awesome. And then after that, well, quite recently, I was involved with some notable crypto projects, leading them and working the marketing side of things. But recently, right now, I'm involved with this new technology called Endpoint Lock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so we have the security experts here, as you can see. So let's get right into it. It's very important that security is taking its place in crypto. A lot of hacks have happened. So, Chris, I just want to know, could you, give a few examples of some of the attacks that can happen in the crypto world?
I think the biggest one that people have experienced that I've seen is just people like the typical mantra of not your keys, not your crypto. So the more technical term is custodial versus non-custodial. So do you own the private key and do you control it for access to your information? And if you do that, the next layer of complexity is like, are you sure you're not going to lose it? So if you accidentally, throw out that laptop that you had your private key on and you forgot about 5 years ago, how are you going to retrieve that? So making sure that you've got A, control of your private key, and then B, that you've got it backed up or that you're sure you'll be able to access it at any time in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, I always say no keys, no cheese. Same thing there, self-custody. But you're right. A lot of Bitcoin has been lost simply because people have thrown away devices. And, that's one huge one as far as security of keeping your Bitcoin. But Shannon, what else have you seen in the crypto space? How people get their crypto stolen or some of the security attacks?
I mean, all of the different malware attacks and all of the different recent attacks. I mean, you can't do crypto without a keystroke. So 90% of malware comes with a keylogger just attached to it. So people don't realize it, and the antivirus companies do a good job at finding them, but it takes 206 days for your average antivirus company to realize that they're compromised. And then they fix it after that. But you still got 200 days of data being typed in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And so, Shannon, do you think newcomers, are they aware of these attacks, or do you think they still have some catching up to do?
Major catching up to do, because most people don't even realize that all Microsoft products come with a keylogger. I mean, Microsoft has it, and anybody can Google that and say, hey, Microsoft built in the keylogger. So if Bill Gates and those guys want to know what you're typing, in theory, they probably could access it if you have a PC or Android.
Oh, man. And again, as far as attacks, Chris, what do you think as far as the keylogger ransomware attacks? Do you think people are newbies? Are they ready for these attacks? Do you think they should take certain steps to avoid them?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of steps you can take to avoid it. I think one of the challenges that we witnessed in the IT security field, which it sounds like the two of you guys know as well is we've never really made it easy for the users, and so it's still really intimidating. And unfortunately, I think crypto is just where IT was in the 90s, right? Where it's really intimidating for non-technical people to know, how am I supposed to know what a keylogger is? Not everyone wants to go and research that, how do you mitigate from that risk? And so I think we're doing a bit of disservice to people right now. I think one of the things I'm observing as well is a lot of the industry is kind of riding on the app train of smartphones, for example. But in order to install an app on most smartphones, you have to go through an app store, which is run by, an American tech company that probably has jurisdiction to go and see what you're doing on that phone. So this reliance that we have just on, American tech company app stores, and then the software developers underneath that, if you're installing some kind of wallet, for example, there's so many security vector attacks for those of us in the industry that we're aware of. But how do we simplify that for the user so they don't need to know about these kind of risks, and it's minimized in terms of knowledge that they have to be able to be an active participant in the crypto world. So it's not just for the select, technically privileged few.
Oh yeah, and you said something I want to hit on there, Chris. You said we're doing the people a disservice by not giving them this information. So let's give my viewers, let's do them a service. And why don't you name some of the things they can do, some of the tangible things they can do to avoid some of these attacks?
I mean, I think the first one, I run classes on from A to Z in terms of crypto. And the one that I start with, no matter which path you take in my classes, is password management. So the very first step is just managing passwords. And I recommend an open source solution called KeePass. So it's KeePass. It's free. Again, it's open source. And from there, you only need to remember one really, really good password for the rest of your life. So make sure it's at least like 5 words that you'll remember, maybe 6 words that don't necessarily go together. Like, apple, rainbow, tree, diamond, butterfly as a quick example. So those are easy for you to remember, and it's quite long for a brute force attacker to remember. But once you're in there, you can set up KeePass and say, every time I generate a password for my, say doing Gmail or Facebook or my cryptocurrency wallet, I don't want a password that's less than 200 bits of entropy or less than 35 characters long. So for example, I could never remember any of my passwords right now. They're all in KeePass. And so I only have to remember that one password moving forward. And I think if there's one step that everyone should take is using an open source password manager that's not reliant on a corporation for it to be managed. Right.
And that's an important point to put in, because there is a centralized point of attack, right? When you have that corporation. So you do want to keep it open source. Thank you for that, Chris. I appreciate it. And Shannon, we're talking about users mostly so far, but what can companies do to protect themselves from some of these ransomware attacks that have happened or may happen in the future?
Okay, a lot of companies think that they can rely only on EDRs and XDRs, but the EDR and the XDR is kind of like the check engine light. You have a check engine light come on in your car. You know that there's something wrong with your car, but you don't know exactly what it is. You got to take it in, and maybe they got to take it apart and try and figure out where the data is leaking. What the key is here is a lot like with the Colonial Pipeline hack. Somebody inside of that organization possibly got some type of ransomware from an email. Could have been just really, not intentional, but from that, they went and got into everything. So the key is they have to have some type of point of solution for the front door. I mean, they have everything they need on the back door, like antivirus, etc., but they need something for 0-day attacks.
Yep. And what are some of the solutions that they could use? Some of these bigger corporations, they are not privy to this information. So what are some of the solutions they could use to prevent those attacks?
Well, I'm working with a company called Endpoint Lock. I'm a strategic sales with Endpoint Lock, and Endpoint Lock is just about to be available to the retail market, but they're working with the United States Air Force, the U.S. Army Futures Command. And if you know the U.S. Army Futures Command, they work with technology that's 5 to 10 years ahead of everybody else. So after U.S. Army Futures Command uses it, then normal people start using it. It's kind of like the robot dog that people see. They used it first. Now everybody's starting to see those as normal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you're a company out there, take note. Could happen to you. We've seen Colonial Pipeline. We've seen a number of corporations that have been hacked over the years. And Chris, I want to ask you, do you think that we will have a big crypto exchange maybe get hacked in the near future?
Yeah, I think that's just a perpetual problem. They're a strategic point of attack with for digital / anonymous cryptocurrency, and so as somebody who's running an exchange myself, it's a huge thing to mitigate for. And one of the things that we've observed is like, are those exchanges actually hacked, or are they like, I swear they were hacked and they were an inside job? I mean, it's very attractive to have access to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency. So we need to make sure that the strategy we've taken is we're fully open source. So we're trying to change the game in terms of the way exchanges are handled and say we're building it so you don't even have to trust us. You can go and look at the source code yourself. And I come from a strong security background, so I've got friends who are kind of some of the world's best pen testers, for example, that can go and look through our code. And so I think that kind of building the community spirit in terms of getting both the privacy and the security community in first is one of the things that's going to really help strengthen the ecosystem in terms of the exchange bases, which are one of the biggest weak points. And I think the last thing I would say, which I know both of you are familiar, is like, again, not your keys, not your wallet. And so making sure that you're only using the exchange when you're, say, doing an on-ramp or off-ramp. And what that means is when you're buying or selling crypto for Canadian or US dollars, that's when you need to use an exchange and go through, make sure that you're not participating in financial crime. That's why we have these on-ramp, off-ramp exchanges. But once you've done the exchange, you should be moving that Bitcoin or that cryptocurrency to a wallet that you control and not holding it on the exchange. I've personally been a victim to one of the big Canadian exchanges that went away a few years ago. And it's one of those things you learn once, and you'll hopefully learn your lesson and never let it happen again.
Oh yeah, and just to guess, was that exchange Quadriga CX?
It was, yes. And it's actually really, my story I think is kind of novel in that regard, in that I've been talking for years that nobody should be trusting currency on an exchange, which I didn't. I had all of my cryptocurrency from the 2016-17 rush in cold storage, as one should. And finally, I was like, okay, it's time to cash out now. And and so when I cashed out, it actually converted the CAD, and the CAD just never hit my bank account. And by terrible luck, I picked the 2-week period that the exchange went under. Was the only short window that I actually moved it on. So I did kind of eat my own dog food. I wasn't holding it on Quadriga or anything, but it was just bad timing in my case.
Oh man, all good. And Chris, I promise, I think we are the same person in a parallel universe, because I too had my coins off of an exchange, off of Bittrex in 2017, went to quote unquote cash out or the exchange, and they changed their privacy settings 2 days before. And they were saying you can't put in a certain amount, and if it's hacked, we have nothing to do with it. Lost money there. So I'm with you, brother. It happens to the best of us. But that's how important it is. Even as big in security we are, it can happen to anybody. So that's definitely a good example to use there. And as far as exchanges, Shannon, what do you think about the DeFi, sector? Because people are saying, hey, if we have decentralized finance, it shouldn't be as easy to hack. Centralized exchanges should be easy to hack. But we have seen a lot of DeFi hacks over the past year. Do you think there should be some process where DeFi code can be audited and secure?
Code auditing is key. I believe that, excuse me. I believe that that's a real key in making sure that it's not controlled just by, some of the big people that are controlling the situation right now. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is happening just from social engineering. It can be a regular user that is just unwittingly downloading the wrong email or clicking the wrong link. And with that, as much as they want to try and keep control of what they need to keep control of, they're going to get compromised no matter what.
Yep. And as far as these companies and users, we want to make sure they have great security. But just moving to a broader place, recently we just saw El Salvador adopt Bitcoin as currency. We're seeing Paraguay put in a bill to adopt Bitcoin as currency. What do those countries need to do to ensure that they have the security necessary for either an airdrop or for them to use it for payments? What do you think, Chris?
What do they need to do? Well, there is a lot of kind of moving pieces in terms of handling at a national level scale. So I just hope that they have the right teams doing it and the experienced teams. Right now, it's so attractive. It's kind of changed the game, as you guys are probably aware, in terms of Bitcoin. And more recently, in most people's minds, is Lightning Network. And so everyone is scrambling in the industry right now to kind of adopt Lightning and learn it and kind of build these wallets. Whereas, we've been kind of, I guess, lucky, if you want to call it that. But at CoinOS, we were one of the first Lightning wallet providers. We've been doing Lightning-based P2P since 2018. So, it's not one of these standard companies you hear about that have been doing it for 3 months. We've got years of experience. We're processing, 6 figures every week at least. And so you just need to make sure that you're talking to organizations that have got the experience, the infrastructure, and team behind them. And that what I fear is that if you're kind of bringing in the cool new apps, is they might not have that kind of battle-tested experience to be what we would in the industry call production ready. And so I think that's one of the most concerning things I have, is that I hope the countries that are looking at adopting it are talking to the people who are making sure that the people on the ground are going to be safe and be able to manage that kind of capacity at that kind of scale. And I guess that's my biggest concern coming out of the gate. But on the positive, it's super exciting. I mean, you've mentioned 2 of them, and I think there's like 14 other countries now chomping at the bit to make Bitcoin legal tender in their countries. So this Lightning P2P payment thing is going to grow, and I'm just lucky to be at the kind of forefront for the last few years in this space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel the same. Very lucky to be at the forefront of the space to speak about security. Anything to add there, Shannon?
Yeah, I just hope that the countries do their part in allowing it to be open, because a lot of these countries right now are trying to totally control it and then make it go under some type of only digital currency that they control. So it's basically the same thing. So keeping it open is key. And for the user, they have to take the steps to control their own keys, control their own keyboards, control their own phones. And that's one of the big keys that we're doing with our solution. So since endpoint lock is a, example of a big solution that can control your destiny as far as keeping your keystrokes, private, this is something that everybody needs to know about and look into.
Oh, yeah. And again, thank you both, fellas, for coming on today. Enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate you for coming.
Thanks so much, Isaiah.
Appreciate you, sir.
That's it for this episode of Community Crypto. Every week, we're building a global community with local crypto groups. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on CoinDesk TV. See you then.